Webvan. They were a grocery delivery company, 1999. They raised $880 million to launch in 10 cities before having proven one.
That's fascinating. All right, for any of the listeners that have a date night coming up, Burger King cologne.
Yeah, this one's shocking. I mean, they came out with cologne that smelled like flame-broiled meat, and obviously that didn't take off. Incredibly, Harley-Davidson also came out with a cologne.
Oh.
So I put together the 6 forces of failure framework because I realized that every one of these items failed based on one or two primary reasons.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome back to the Run the Numbers podcast, where today's guest may be the only investor who moonlights as a museum curator, a museum of failure to be exact. Sean Jacobsohn is a partner at Norwest, and he recently published one of the sharpest breakdowns of the CFO tech stack I've ever seen. We'll dig into how fragmented the ecosystem really is, what it takes for founders to stand out, and why deep domain expertise still matters, even in the age of AI. From Flowcast to Enable, Sean shares what gets his attention as an investor and whether finance software is heading towards vertical-specific solutions or consolidation by the giants. Spoiler, your ERP might be hungrier than you think. We'll also talk partnerships. Before his VC days, Sean led business development at Upwork, WageWorks, and Cornerstone. Wow, 3 publicly traded companies. And he's boiled his experience into 5 rules every company should hear before signing their next channel deal. And of course, the Failure Museum. What ESPN phones, Burger King cologne, and New Coke have to teach us about product market fit and why some ideas should stay on the whiteboard, like lawn darts. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Hey, Metrics fans, let me ask you something. Do you know what keeps CFOs and finance teams up at night? Well, it's not the complex analyses or forecasting models. It's the mind-numbing tasks of chasing receipts, reconciling expenses, and juggling 5 different systems just to track company spending. I was talking with a finance leader last week who calculated her team was spending an astonishing 20 hours weekly just on expense administration. That's nearly 1,000 hours annually on low-value tasks. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Rippling Spend. Rippling Spend is the only platform that automatically handles your entire company's spending in one unified system. What makes it different? It's built on Rippling's workforce platform. So when org changes happen, like someone getting promoted or changing departments, all approval workflows, access permissions, and policies update automatically. Picture this. When your marketing director goes on vacation, expense approvals don't sit in their inbox waiting for their return. Instead, they're automatically routed to the right backup approver. No manual delegation needed. Meanwhile, your finance team gets real-time visibility into all company spending with no more month-end surprises. As a Run the Numbers listener, you can get an exclusive demo showing exactly how much time your org would save. Just visit rippling.com/metrics to learn more. That's rippling.com/metrics. Do it, guys. As a CFO, you're expected to bring clarity to everything, including how your company manages ownership. The tools you use should make that easier, not harder. But when they come with hidden fees, data you can't always trust, and support you can't rely on, you end up with more frustration than clarity. That's where Pulley comes in. Pulley is the cap table management platform built for finance leaders who need accurate, decision-ready data from a system that works for your business, not against it. With Pulley, you get intuitive workflows, audit-ready reporting, and support you can count on, all backed by predictable pricing you can plan around, so you can stay compliant and make smarter decisions about your company's future. Manage everything from fundraise modeling to ASC 718 reporting to custom liquidity programs, all on one trusted platform. Hundreds of high-growth companies like Linear, Fathom, and Runway trust Pulley to help turn ownership into a strategic advantage, and joining them is now easier than ever. You can switch to Pulley in as little as 5 days. And for a limited time, they're offering 25% off your first year. To claim your exclusive offer, visit pulley.com/mostlymetrics. That is PULLEY.com/mostlymetrics. Pulley.com/mostlymetrics. This episode of Run the Numbers is brought to you by Navan, the all-in-one travel and expense solution. CFOs and finance leaders, let's be honest here. Your T&E process is broken. Manual reconciliations waste valuable time, policy violations drain money, and limited visibility creates unnecessary risk. Nobody likes that. Navan cuts through these problems, giving finance teams the clarity and control needed to close with confidence, faster and with fewer headaches. Connect your existing eligible Visa, MasterCard, or American Express cards directly to Navan and keep all your card rewards and banking relationships. Get real-time expense tracking, automated policy enforcement, and AI-powered reconciliation that works. Companies like Anthropic, Unilever, and Zoom trust Navan to manage travel spend smarter and increase compliance. Are you ready to modernize your T&E process? Visit navan.com/runthenumbers for your demo today. That's navan.com/runthenumbers. Tell them CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I've been following you on LinkedIn for like 2 years, and I've been obsessed with this concept of the Failure Museum. And for those who are on video right now, Sean, are we in the Failure Museum? Is that where we're recording from?
Yes, we are.
This is exciting. So we're going to go through a couple of my favorite examples of products or companies, didn't really make it out the other side. But before we do, I've been obsessed with the CFO tech stack report you just dropped. And it's one of the best market maps really that I've seen on the space in a while. Simple question, maybe not a simple answer though. From the gate, like how fragmented is the ecosystem today for CFO tools?
I think it's very fragmented, but we have grouped companies into 15 different categories. And in each of those categories, there's a large number of legacy players and a large number of new generation players. And our market map has over 300 companies in it. And ever since we released it, we've got tremendous amount of response. We expect in 6 months when we release the next version of the market map that we'll have over 400 companies listed. And I do think it's the most comprehensive market map ever created for CFOs because we also are including international companies and companies selling to specific industry verticals.
That makes a lot of sense. I stared at it for a while. I even had one of my team members go through and write down all the company names for me just so I could go through on a spreadsheet and do my own analysis. So kudos to your team for pulling that together. And what struck me is it's a huge TAM. You breaking it down into, I think you said it was 15 categories maybe. And it seems like it's attracting a ton of founders. My LinkedIn is just jam-packed with all sorts of founders asking for feedback on products. Not that I even think I'm that qualified to opine on it, but I guess it's the podcast. And what I noticed is like a lot of these founders actually don't have finance experience. So your advice for founders building within the stack, what were your takeaways around having deep domain expertise?
Well, if you look at the companies that I've backed, most of the founders have deep domain expertise. I've invested in 10 companies selling to CFOs. Norwest has invested in 20 total, so 10 for me, 10 for others. And I can mention a few of mine where the domain expertise really shine. I think with Flowcast. Flowcast is an accounting software solution. The CEO was an individual contributor accountant at Cornerstone On Demand where I used to work. He felt the problem as an operator and left to start the company. And then you have Enable, which is a rebate management solution that sells software to B2B distributors. Well, the CEO was an executive at a B2B distributor and left the company because he had passion around solving this problem. And then Oro is a procurement software company. The CEO was a chief product officer of Ariba and realized there needed to be a next generation procurement solution.
To pick on that Flowcast example, because we've actually spoken to Razak Jalla, one of my favorite guests, CFO of Flowcast. Like you probably can't come to that earned secret or that insight about the product if you haven't closed the books yourself, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly what he did. And Cornerstone was using a legacy solution, Blackline. He leaves the company to start Flowcast, and then they replace Blackline with Flowcast later on.
Oh, no way. Okay. Yeah, I think it takes a special person who's lived through a certain pain within the finance tech stack to say, how can we do that better? But what you just mentioned there is the word legacy player. A lot of these tools are coming from or have originated from 800-pound gorillas in the room, right? Like, I think it's an interesting spot in the finance tech stack because they're not going after modern companies. Usually they're trying to disrupt massive companies that are international in scale.
Yeah, my entire portfolio, and it's not all selling to CFOs, but more to CFOs than any other part of my portfolio, is disrupting legacy players. I think it's hard to create new behavior, new budget, new category. It's much easier to be a better mousetrap disrupting legacy players. As long as the legacy player doesn't have unfair distribution, it's ripe for disruption.
And that's what you saw with a lot of the, I guess, modules that spun out of ERPs and the like. You have this central source of record, a system of truth. And then they're like, oh, well, we can do closed management on top of it. Oh, we can do revenue recognition on top of it. But eventually you get to a point where like the main thing isn't the main thing anymore. And that probably leaves the door open for opportunity.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Enable for a second. So we also spoke with Nick Rose on the podcast a couple weeks ago. That was a crazy business to me because I'd come from a software company that was 100% channel driven. Like rebates were the bane of my existence. And for the benefit of listeners, rebates is whenever money is traveling, I guess, back uphill to somebody else. Was that disrupting an existing, solution, or was that creating a new category?
Well, the big legacy player, the black line equivalent in this space is Vistex. Vistex is an on-premise company at significant scale, but I would say that they're not only replacing Vistex, they are replacing Spreadsheets as well. So the way I think about it, you don't need to be always replacing the legacy player, but the legacy player created the category, and people have made a conscious decision: do I use the legacy player or do I do things manually? In some cases, they still do things manually because the legacy player is hard to use, hard to implement. And so Enable came out with the first cloud solution in this space. It's very complex to do on spreadsheets, very error prone. And just like commissions are paid to direct salespeople, B2B distributors are paid through rebates. And without a software solution, you get paid the rebates at the end of the year. And with the software solution, you can pay rebates in real time and influence behavior in real time. So not only can you automate a complex manual process, you can generate more revenue from your distributors. You could motivate them to selling more SKUs or more volume, different geographies. And for very large companies that have thousands of SKUs, it's hard to influence behavior without a real-time software solution.
Sean, just reflecting on your answer there, a lot of your investment theses seem to come from either somebody using like an old legacy incumbent product that's just not serving their needs anymore, or it's too expensive, or using spreadsheets. When you take a look at the market map, how much of that was like, hey, it's being done on spreadsheets right now?
I think, a high percentage of the solutions are automating processes that were previously on spreadsheets. But in every one of the cases, there is a legacy solution. So if you look in all of our 15 categories, we have a lot of legacy solutions in a category and then a lot of new generation solutions. So every single category has disruptors, but still a high percentage is done on spreadsheets, even if a legacy player created the category.
It's funny. I was at a CFO conference recently, and a founder of an FP&A planning tool actually came out and said, he's like, we all crap on spreadsheets, but it's actually the best software product that's ever been created. Sean, do you think that we're moving in a direction where there will be solutions built based on industry vertical, like manufacturing or auto?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big area of focus for me. I've invested in 2 construction software companies selling to CFOs and 2 manufacturing software companies. And the industry leader in a vertical can get up to 50% of the market. And an industry leader in a horizontal often gets 10 or 15% of the market. So you don't need to be going after as big of a market if you're going after a vertical. And then you earn the right to sell more products to the same customers over time. And it's a lot lower sales and marketing costs because being the industry standard, everyone talks about, hey, this is a standard solution to solve this problem. So yeah, I've invested in manufacturing and construction. I'll do more of that. I'm also looking at transportation, financial services, retail.
ServiceTitan is a company that comes to mind that serves the trades industry, vertical software for plumbers, HVAC, etc. Just to be more specific, are we getting into an era then that it's not just, hey, you have this vertical software solution for everything you do, but you have a financial solution within the vertical?
Yeah. What's cool about selling to finance is finance can buy for their own internal use, and it can be a quicker sales cycle. Finance needs to approve software in other parts of the organization, so it's an extra layer.
I want to flag that for listeners because that's like a key insight right there. If you think about who your ICP is and who you're selling to, usually to qualify them, you need to say, are they a budget holder? But then the next step is to say, will that budget get approved when they spend it? Finance has a bit of a cheat code.
Absolutely.
Sean, investing in these verticals, would people have said 10 years ago, this is too small to pay attention to?
Well, I think there's been several companies have gotten a significant scale selling to verticals, and it's opened people's eyes. I mean, obviously in construction, you have Procore, who's a successful public company. In life sciences, you have Viva, who's a successful public company. I think people have realized these companies get to scale more quickly because there's viral word of mouth spreading the solution across the industry. They realize that customers are telling them what other products they need, so they continue to layer the cake on top of the initial product. And the sales and marketing cost is a lot lower because you're very focused, and these companies can get to profitability much quicker.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market, rates will rise, rates will fall. Can someone please just invent a crystal ball already? Until then, over 40,000 businesses have future-proofed their companies with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. Whether you're closing the books in days, not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If you listen to this podcast, you'll know I ask CFOs all the time to rep their tech stacks, and I would say almost every one of them use NetSuite. And that's what I would use too. Whether you're a company earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/metrics. The guide is free to you. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, it's netsuite.com/metrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report with accuracy? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built solutions for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks with minimal IT involvement, enabling seamless collaboration across your organization's key financial workflows. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unmatched scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Visit planful.com/metrics to see how you can elevate your team this year with Planful. They will hook you up. It is planful.com/metrics. Tell them your boy CJ sent you. Planful.com/metrics. If you're a CFO trying to keep up with usage-based billing, complex contracts, and a finance team drowning in spreadsheets, listen up. Meet Tabs. Tabs is the AI-native platform automating contract to revenue for finance teams that are scaling fast. Whether you're selling custom terms, usage-based pricing, or a mix of PLG and sales-led, been there, Tabs turns month-end chaos into clean cash flow. It's like having a controller that never sleeps and a billing analyst who actually understands your pricing model. No more manual reconciliations, no more late-night close deadlines, just clean data from contract to cash. It used to drive me nuts that we do all the work to close the books inside our ERP in our FP&A tool, and then we had to export the most important part, revenue, to this janky spreadsheet and manually calculate what we did that period. And don't even get me started on the back of the envelope calcs we did to get to ARR based on all the unique contract terms we had floating around. Our investors would wince if they knew. Let's be honest, legacy systems here are not going to cut it, folks. Tabs is the system I wish I had in my CFO days. Fast-growing companies like Cortex, StatSig, Cursor, and others are already using tabs to instantly generate invoices from any contract, automate RevRec, cash application, and get finance out of manual mode. If you want to automate the mess and fix the way money enters the building, baby, go check out tabs.inc/metrics. Again, that is tabs.inc/metrics. And if your team's still closing the books like it's 2015, now's a good time to upgrade. Yeah, I think you nailed it around the word of mouth coefficient, especially in vertical software, because if you're selling to a group of people who aren't traditionally tech buyers, say their tech refresh cycle is only like every 10 years, you're probably going to ask the guy in the next town who runs, say, an auto body shop what he's using.
Right, exactly.
I think a lot has changed in that space. It's interesting that the core systems of record are being switched up and all moved to the cloud. Do you think that an element of this with vertical software is right place in the right time with the move to cloud, or what era do you think we're in there?
Well, when you look at, there definitely are a lot of legacy players that are selling on premise, and the new generation cloud player is taking hold. So I have another example in my portfolio, Legion. They're disrupting Kronos. Kronos has been primarily an on-premise player, and Legion is the next generation player for workforce management, selling to retail. Even the SaaS 1.0 products, they were built more for the administrator rather than the user. And users are used to a certain consumer friendliness of a solution in their consumer lives. They expect that in their business lives. So the new generation SaaS 2.0 solutions can be much easier to use and much more user friendly than the legacy players.
That's such a great call out. It's almost like the administrator was this, not a choke point, but there is a certain element of just control that you want to have, but you're not thinking about the person who has their fingers in the keys and has to use it every day. Like, is Kronos a timekeeping system for people logging their hours?
It's timekeeping, forecasting, scheduling. And Legion came out with this, next generation cloud solution that's easy to use. It's mobile first, and it's the system of record that hourly employees use on a day-to-day basis.
Just reflecting on the little that I know about Kronos, but I've always heard the complaints of the people who are on the other end having to enter in their hours and log their time. And you think, well, they're not the ones who were purchasing it first.
Right.
Sean, if we think about time as a pendulum, do you think we'll see consolidation and incumbents will gobble up these point solutions? So will you, I don't know, ERP, HRIS, CRM, will they take over many of these categories, the 15 that you outlined?
I think that they'll buy some companies in the categories. So, Norwest has made 20 investments selling to finance. 2 have been acquired by some of the big players. So Spiff was one of my portfolio companies selling sales commission software. Salesforce bought them last year. And then Workday bought Adaptive Insights, an FP&A tool, one of our portfolio companies. And I do think you're going to see a lot more acquisitions from Workday, SAP, Salesforce. I mean, they can only grow so much through organic means, and a really good way of growing now is inorganic. So their stock prices are doing reasonably well, and late stage funding isn't as accessible. Companies aren't going public as frequently. So there's going to be a much more likely ability to agree on what the valuation would be upon acquisition. So I do think you're going to see a lot more M&A this year and even more next year.
It's a great point, because if Salesforce, I'm just making up a number, I don't have it in front of me. Let's say that they're growing at 12% year over year. When I get the renewal via email each year and they're raising the price 6 to 8% on me, it's like, well, how much of that is coming from net new products? They're probably relying a good amount on price increases.
Yeah, and if you think about it, when they buy a company, they could buy companies that are, in the hundreds of millions of revenue, but then they throw it in their distribution. I think Salesforce has like 20,000 sales reps. So you throw that in your distribution. If you buy a company at 100 million of ARR, in a few years, it could be a 500 million of ARR, and that can start making a real difference for Salesforce.
Exactly. And I know we're not talking about cybersecurity or dev tools or anything like that, but that was kind of the rationale with Google acquiring Wiz, right? You can put that into Google's engine, and overnight you have a lot of synergies.
And that's why strategics will pay more to buy a company than private equity, because they have that natural distribution engine. And within a year or two, if they paid a higher multiple, it doesn't look like an issue anymore.
Exactly. They can amortize away a lot of that premium pretty quickly, right?
Exactly.
Sean, I want to zoom in on the segment that I find most fascinating to me, and that's the FP&A segment. I know you've looked at and invested in companies there. Where's that space going?
Well, we did invest in, one of the players, Adaptive Insights. It was a great outcome for us. It has become very crowded. When we've taken a look at it, and we can't even fit all the names on our market map.
Yeah.
We've noticed at least 50 players in the space. So I think a lot of the players are selling to SMB tech companies. The ones that have a real chance of disrupting Anaplan and Adaptive Insights are those that can sell to multiple industries and sell to the enterprise. The one that is starting to break out in that area would be Pigment, but it's still early in the journey.
I think FP&A is sandwiched in an interesting spot because it's not the financial source of record. It's built on top of the data that's coming from your ERP, like a NetSuite or a QuickBooks. And it's also not the HRIS people source of record. And we saw earlier this year that Mosaic got picked up by HiBob. And so I'm wondering, the confluence of these two systems of record, you got FP&A in the middle. What's the outcome?
I think you're going to see a lot more of those acquisitions, and my assumption that wasn't a big outcome for Mosaic.
Yeah. It's an interesting spot. And do you have any thoughts on if FP&A and BI analytics will converge down the road? It just feels like we're piping in a lot more product data to our FP&A forecasting these days.
It seems like a natural convergence. And yeah, I do think there's going to be a lot more consolidation. I mean, there's so many players out there, and it's hard to get to scale with just one product. The best companies sell multiple products. It's really hard to get to $1 billion in revenue with just one product. And either you build it organically or you merge, you acquire companies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's the promise of AI agents in finance? Will that be fulfilled? Because right now we aren't really seeing deep enough expertise or accuracy. And that's just one guy's perspective.
I do think in the finance space, accuracy matters so much. So for instance, 98% accuracy in payables is not good enough. And so it seems like it's going to take longer for these to be adopted in finance. I think at this point in time, you're just seeing experimentation.
And it's hard to experiment if you're sending 2% of your money to the wrong person.
Exactly. So they're experimenting in other areas that are lower risk for finance.
Do you see in your portfolio companies any efficiencies that the finance department is getting from AI off the outset? And I'm asking because there's so many pieces out there written about how to accelerate your revenue using AI, but I don't feel like there's enough thought leadership out there on how to just get more efficient inside.
I'm not seeing a lot in finance except for, automating some manual processes. It's still early innings.
Yeah, I'm trying to size up the risk reward myself. Sean, I want to segue to talk about the rules of partnerships. And I noticed that before your investing career, you had 3 amazing runs in the partnership and biz dev sphere. You were at Upwork, WageWorks, and Cornerstone, 3 amazing companies. If you're down to play ball here, can I lead you through your framework on the 5 key rules of partnerships and maybe you can expand upon them? Cool.
Yeah, happy to.
All right. So the first one, I think I got it right. Number 1, partner fit. What's that?
Yeah, it means that you need sales commissions are not going to motivate a partner to working with you. What's the most important thing is you help them sell more of their own product more quickly, and that's going to motivate them to want to work with you.
So you can't just pay or spiff your way with commissions on your own stuff. You got to help them sell more of their stuff, you're saying?
Exactly. If your product can help them compete more effectively against one of their competitors and fill a gap, that's going to motivate them way more than spiffing them.
It's funny because financial analysis paralysis is real in the partnership world where you're like, well, I guess we're willing to give them an 8% commission on this. But it's like, that's actually not what they want. They want to sell more of their own product, not yours. Number 2, entering new markets.
Yeah, I think partnerships can help you enter new geographies, new industries, and ideally, you don't want to have to build the biggest possible sales force. So at Cornerstone, we got to scale without having to hire the biggest sales force compared to our competitors. We used partners to sell into Asia Pacific and Latin America before we considered selling there direct. We also use them in healthcare and higher education. So if you think about it, it's a lot harder to sell a new logo than have a partner sell your product to their existing customers. And in those industries and geographies, we decided to go partner first.
I've been at 2 companies where it was uphill sledding going into Asia in particular.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's hard to do it on your own, and through partners, it can be magical.
Number 3, enablement.
Yeah, I think a lot of people celebrate signing a partnership and they think, wow, that means it's going to be successful. I think signing a partnership is the easiest. And if you really want these partners to be truly successful, and especially if you want them to resell, you need to train them to sell, to market, to support the clients, and put them in the same training you would do your own employees in those functions.
I want to zoom in on this part because there are a number of biz dev people who listen to this podcast. You were out there, deal jockey, trying to get these deals signed. How did you help with the enablement? Like, where did the rubber meet the road after it was signed?
Well, if you think about it, I was running business development at these places, and I was focused on resellers, and so my team were salespeople as well. They were basically managing the salespeople at the partner to sell our products, and so we needed to give the salespeople at the partner the same training that the salespeople got at our company, and continually refreshing the sales training. And then, we need to train the marketing folks the same way we trained our marketing folks. We need to train the customer support and implementation the same way we trained our teams as well.
I think what you're getting at there is it goes deeper than just throwing like a battle card over the fence and saying, like, when you're faced with this competitor, talk about us this way, because if done wrong and you don't enable them, it can actually be like super dilutive to your brand.
Yeah. And if these people are not appropriately trained, they're not going to be successful. The partnership's not going to work, and you have to kill the partnership.
And this is a continuous effort, I think, is what you're getting at. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah. Just like you're constantly training your teams as you come out with new products or the market evolves, you have to constantly be training the partner, and the partner obviously continually has new people coming in, and you need to just be constantly refreshing the training.
Number 4, reciprocation.
Yeah, very often the small player, like they were all 3 of these companies you mentioned that I worked at were small. We were trying to partner with the large players. Usually the small guys like, hey, big guys, send me business, send me business, send me business. I mean, what's their motivation to sending you business? I find the best way to get their attention is to start sending them business. So you find out, what products do they sell and which ones could we help find opportunities for, and just start sending them leads. So ADP was the big gorilla in Cornerstone space, and big payroll player, and I wanted to get their attention, so we just started sending them business. It wasn't a significantly high volume, but it stood out. And I was sharing with a senior executive at ADP all the deals we were sending them, and it just kept ramping over time as we got bigger. And they realized, wow, the market is really bringing us together. We should have a deeper relationship, and it actually led to a reseller partnership. And they ended up having over 1,000 sales reps reselling our product, and all started with us sending them business first.
It's funny. Send them business, not an edible arrangement.
Exactly.
It's interesting to look back because the 3 companies you worked at, Upwork, WageWorks, Cornerstone, massive companies, some of them publicly traded. You were the small guy going to these big companies, you said.
We were the small. I joined all of them at the Series A. They all later went public. And yeah, we were the small guy originally.
How often in your experience is it the little guy going to the big guy to work on a partnership? It feels like there's some sort of 80-20 here in terms of which way the tide's going.
It's always the little guy going to the big guy, and the big guys are usually focused on partnering with other big guys that can help them with everyone's really trying to go after a bigger player that can help them with distribution. But the big guy will go after the little guy if their product can help them sell more of their own product. And I think ADP realized that with Cornerstone after we got their attention through sending them business.
Yeah. Flag that for listeners. Send business. It's the easiest way to open a conversation. M&A, number 5. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, most companies get acquired from partnerships that are successful. So Spiff, as I mentioned before, when we invested in the Series A, we did a partnership with Salesforce right after that. We had a really, great relationship that continued to blossom. And 3.5 years later, after our investment, Salesforce bought them, and they knew them really well. It was a quick diligence process because they knew them very well. So I always recommend partnering early. It can get you more cost-effective distribution. You can crowd out your competitors, and some of those most successful partners may end up acquiring you down the road.
This is maybe a curveball question, but sometimes you truly are trying to go and partner. This has happened to me before for distribution, and then they get their corp dev team involved, and that partnership kind of gets put on hold before you can even prove anything because they want to kick the tires on an acquisition. Have you had that happen in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they'll bring corp dev in there, but I mean, in most cases, we're not interested in selling that early. I mean, I think like I said, the best outcomes are from partners that are having success with you, and they're willing to pay a premium. If corp dev comes in there and there's no prior relationship, they're never going to pay that premium that you're going to need to sell the company and make it compelling at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about building lines, not dots with these folks. We had Chad Gold on the podcast who recently just accepted position, I think today, at Full Story. So congrats to him. And to that point, I mean, there's a quote out there that companies are bought, not sold. What's the meaning behind that one?
The best outcomes are those from partners that have a really good success with you, and then they chase you to acquire you. You can't just you're not going to have a great outcome if you say, hey, I'm for sale, I need to hire a banker. If no one had a good experience with you before, it's unlikely to pay a premium to acquire you.
That checks out. So just to recap here, partner fit, entering new markets, enablement, reciprocation, and M&A. Sean, if you had to pick one of those to really hone in on and spend your time getting right, how would you look at it?
Well, I think that the best way to get a partnership going is this reciprocation idea. In so many cases, people try to get the big guy's attention. They never get anywhere. And if you just start focused on a smaller number of potential partners and start sending the business early on, that's going to separate you from all the other small guys trying to partner with the big guy. And then everything else, kind of falls in line after that.
Cool. All right. The moment people have been waiting for. We're going to get into the failure museum here. So first off, what was the genesis of starting this?
Well, 2.5 years ago, I went to a Warriors game, and I got an FTX sponsored bobblehead the same week that FTX filed for bankruptcy. And I had a sports memorabilia collection growing up, and I realized that this is a collector's item. That's pretty cool. And I went back home and realized I had other sports-related items that I got at a game sponsored by failed companies. And I started blogging about this on LinkedIn. I got over 100,000 views on my first blog about it. And the Warriors gave me another bobblehead sponsored by FTX. They thought it was pretty cool. And it just created a real discussion around failure. And I think a lot of people are scared to talk about failure. And so I just started buying some items on eBay. I've gotten a lot of donations. And before you know it, I have 1,200 items in my museum 2.5 years later. And, anywhere from failed companies to failed products, failed sports teams, and failed toys.
FTX. So that was the first item, huh?
FTX was the first item.
My brother has an SVB backpack from his internship, which I always thought was kind of funny. Sean, what are the 6 forces of failure?
So I put together the 6 forces of failure framework because I realized that every one of these items failed based on one or two primary reasons. And so I tagged every one of them to these reasons where they're relevant. So it's product market fit, financial, competition, customer success, team, and timing.
Is one of those more prevalent than the others?
I find that product market fit is the one that is tagged most commonly to these items. And often people scale go to market before they hit product market fit.
Sean, you mentioned product market fit is one of the drivers for failure. Do you mean that they never had it and they just scaled the org too fast, or they fell out of it? Like they had it at one point, but something changed in their environment?
Yeah, usually they never had it and they thought they had it and they invested a lot of money in go to market thinking they have it. An example would be Webvan. They were a grocery delivery company. 1999, they raised $880 million to launch in 10 cities before having proven one.
That's fascinating. I recently wrote that I think product market fit is getting harder to keep these days. And it was something that I was riffing on from listening to Harry Stebbings and Jason Lemkin. And they were saying that with AI companies, we're seeing some of them take off with this meteoric rise, some even hitting 100 million within the first year. But then like something happens, they get disrupted and they fall out of product market fit. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, very often the market changes and competitive forces change. But some person or company may have loved that product for 6 or 12 months or 18 months, but then realize there's a better way to solve that problem. And yeah, then someone could fall out of product market fit at that point.
If you'll humor me, I want to call out a couple of my favorites because I went way down the rabbit hole, Sean. A few too many hours going through your website for the Failure Museum. So first one, the ESPN phone. So this is a relic of my childhood. What happened there?
This is a really fun one for me, which is why I have 3 of them. Well, ESPN came out with this mobile phone where you could call, you had scores, and got ESPN content. It didn't sell very well during that first year. It hit less than 10% of its sales target. And then the iPhone came out a year later and completely killed it.
I forgot the iPhone hadn't came out yet. Cause like in a bubble, sports fanatic, you're like, that's incredible. Like all I'd want out of a phone is the ability to call, text, and check scores.
Yeah, but they couldn't get enough people to buy it.
Next one here, more of a dangerous one, lawn darts. I guess that was marketed as a fun game for the family.
It was a fun game for the family, but pretty dangerous. These are lawn darts with metal tips, and it caused so many injuries that it was outlawed to be sold.
So it actually did sell. It just ran into some legal battles.
Exactly. The legal battles shut it down.
I think I can see this one behind you. New Coke.
Yeah, New Coke, that was launched in 1985 because they were losing ground to Pepsi. But people had such an emotional attachment to the original taste of Coke that didn't take off, and they switched back to the original Coke.
So Coke actually admitted the defeat there and said, let's pack it in.
Yeah, I mean, that's an example of product market fit too. They thought that people love the new taste and it would work, and they scaled go to market there and then realized quickly that they were completely wrong.
All right. For any of the listeners that have a date night coming up, Burger King cologne.
Yeah, this one's shocking. I mean, they came out with cologne that smelled like flame broiled meat, and obviously that didn't take off. Incredibly, Harley Davidson also came out with a cologne.
Oh.
Cologne is a high margin product, and some of these players have decided, hey, why don't we come out with a cologne? But it rarely works. It's not their core competency.
More of a recent one, CNN Plus.
Yeah, CNN Plus was their foray into online streaming, and it failed miserably, and they only had it out there for 3 weeks.
There's only 3 weeks, really?
3 weeks. Crazy.
Sean, I think I see it behind you if I'm getting it right. Is that a Four Loko can?
Yes.
Is Four Loko still around? I'm guessing not, but I remember it quite vividly in college.
Yeah. Four Loko is not around, but that's a fun one. It's kind of crazy that was around back then.
Is there one that's special to you that I didn't ask about that you'd want to riff on for a sec here?
Well, if I turn around and here's a very recent one. I'll show you. This is one I just got last week. It's a Dyson air purifying headphone.
What? What is it? So it purifies the air while you listen to music?
Yeah. And this actually was invented before the pandemic. So this is not about the pandemic. But the problem with this is the fan was too loud. People were embarrassed to wear this in public, and it was too heavy.
Oh.
Kind of crazy idea, huh?
Yeah, that is a crazy idea. That's almost as bad as Burger King clone. Well, to tie it all together, how has the Failure Museum helped you think about launches that don't work, failure in general for all the portfolio companies that you work with?
Well, it really has helped me coach my entrepreneurs better and, engage with potential investments better. I'd say, some of the most successful companies have had to pivot. I've told people that it's okay to take risks and, don't fear failure. A lot of the most successful entrepreneurs have had failed startups before. And especially in Silicon Valley, I think people realize that it's okay to fail. I'm not seeing as much openness to failing outside of Silicon Valley, but I'm trying to train people outside of Silicon Valley to feel comfortable failing. And, I've realized that you can learn as much from failure as success, but people tend to talk more about success. So I'm trying to create an open dialogue here around failure. And as we discussed before, you don't want to scale go to market before you've hit product market fit.
Sean, you used the word pivot there. You've had probably a lot of companies that have pivoted. What's your perspective and gut reaction when you hear the word pivot? Is it a dirty word?
No, I think you earn the right to pivot if you don't run out of money trying. So Cornerstone on Demand, we talked about one of my companies turned out to be very successful. But they started out as a B2C learning company. They almost died and pivoted to a B2B learning company. Then they were able to raise their first material venture round, later went public, got to $1 billion in revenue and sold for $5 billion. But if they did not pivot and realize the B2C opportunity wasn't going to work, they would never become what they became.
It's fascinating how many companies pivot from B2C to B2B. I don't think you usually hear about it going the other direction.
Yeah, you don't. But another one, Slack, was a gaming company and then became what they became and sold for $27 billion. But yeah, I don't really hear of the B2B company becoming a B2C company.
Yeah. Well, Sean, this has been a blast for me. Thanks for taking me into the Failure Museum. And congrats on all the success that you've been having at Norwest. Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.